To ScottTaylor now. He is the publisher of Esprit De Corps magazine. He joins us from Ottawa. And for those of you who are not familiar, Mr. Taylor endured 5 harrowing days back in September of 2004. He was held captive in northern Iraq. And obviously, Scott, you are very familiar with what this kind of situation must have been like for Melissa Fung. What can you share with us, knowing what you went through in your own personal ordeal?
Well, she's going to be absolutely ecstatic now that she's finally been released. I think it was always, for us, I mean, the uncertainty. No one knew that we'd been taken for those 5 days until my colleague was released. A Turkish woman was released the day before I was, and then at that point they knew where we were. And unbeknownst to me, again, was what was happening as far as the negotiations between the Turkish intelligence and the people who were holding us. So she would be completely unaware of what was going on. I mean, I was aware of it here in Ottawa that she was taken. Everybody, of course, in the community knew, even internationally. I mean, I had journalists that I knew from England that were calling up. They knew about it, and everyone was keeping mum on this thing. Everyone praying for the best result. And the fact that she's now been finally released into, you know, on her route home, there's a euphoria that comes over you because, of course, you've had to, certainly in my case, I was prepped for execution 6 times. You prepare yourself to die, and then when you realize that you're actually coming out of it, it's something which is just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I don't think I slept for about 3 days. I just was on the high of being alive again. Yeah,
Scott, and you know, I can see it's emotional for you because it really brings back those moments of life and death that you personally had. And I remember, you know, speaking to you back after your release, after you were kidnapped in Iraq, and as you said, you didn't know from one moment to the next whether you were going to be alive or whether it was going to end right then and there.
6 times in the 5 days they actually prepped me for the execution, whether they blindfolded me and took me out to shoot me, or there was the beheading process was to take place, and then it was different reasons why that was interrupted or why it was changed. But you had to come to the fact, I mean, you had to believe that you were going to die in order to cope with what was going to happen, because that was the emotional roller coaster. So even when they finally did release me into a sort of halfway house and then the Turkish intelligence came and got me, I was still in Iraq without any identification, and it didn't really trust anybody at that point because we've been handed over to different people at different times. So it took a while. And in fact, it was when I phoned home finally and spoke to my wife on the phone, because I had been tortured as well. I mean, I was getting through the pain and still walking. And as soon as I got the connection, the mental connection with her on the phone, knew I was going to be safe, I just physically collapsed. I mean, at that moment, everything came back. The here and now came back into play, and I just collapsed, and then all of it came rushing through. So it was something which, I mean, yeah, when you're going through it, it's like having an out-of-body experience.
Again, we're certainly grateful and thankful for journalists like yourself who go in and take the risks that you do, and certainly in the case of Melissa Fung as well, and it's a happy conclusion in her case as well. But let me ask you, we don't really know much about who took her, for what reason, and how this was all resolved. We do know, as the Prime Minister said just a short time ago, there was no ransom paid, but we also know that it was commercial kidnappers that are believed to have taken her. But for confidentiality reasons, the Prime Minister wouldn't really reveal the details of how she was set free. What can you piece together based on what we know?
Again, I mean, I think it's always sort of the best case scenario, if indeed you get taken in one of these situations, that it is commercially driven, that it is people that are out there to make a buck. And in Iraq, there was a lot of people being taken hostage for ransom around that time in 2004. I was in the other category, of course, myself and the Turkish girl. We were accused of being spies, and we were being held by Ansar al-Islam. So, I mean, they were being driven by fundamental disagreements with who we were and why we were there. And it was only through the intervention of the Turkish intelligence convincing them that I was indeed a journalist that we were able to be released. But in this case, I mean, obviously, if they are looking for money or for some sort of return, and it could be, I think it was Craig Oliver mentioned earlier, the exchange of prisoners or somebody else, that they may want something, not necessarily cash. And again, whatever did take place, as long as it's not going to in any way, you know, put money into the coffers of the Taliban or to the insurgents and endanger our troops, whatever took place over there, I mean, obviously the end result in this case, we're all going to breathe a sigh of relief and thank God that it happened. And again, the fact that there's a confidentiality issue about this, I think we need not probe too far, because again, I still go over there and other people are still going over there.
Right.
And if we need to invoke that, then, I mean, obviously we want to have the same results. So to expose it for now would be...
Let me ask, I mean, you say you still go over there, but there have been numerous warnings from the Taliban and other factions that Canadians specifically are going to start to be targeted more. Do you believe this was a result of that she was specifically targeted because she was Canadian? They wanted to capture a Canadian journalist?
It may have been the case, but again, it may have not been so much the fact that she was from Canada, and it was about, obviously wasn't the Taliban taking her, but if these people were looking for someone who's going to have the cash that they would pay for a foreigner, and that's what was happening in Iraq, was a number of different journalists and different people, NGOs that were working outside the wire, got picked up, and then they realized that they could make quite a bit of money quite quickly because people would pay the amount. I mean, $250,000 or $500,000, and it became quite a lucrative trade. So again, hopefully that won't be the case in Afghanistan, where they twig onto the fact that you can snap up anybody who's a foreigner. When we go in there, myself and my colleagues, we will grow beards, we will grow our hair, we will dress like the locals as much as we can. The fact is, to an average Afghan, we still can be, stick out from 200 meters away. We might fool somebody here, from 50 meters, but over there, I mean, you can't hide the fact that you're a foreigner.
Scott, I appreciate your time and especially your personal insight. And I know, at times like this, it's difficult. So we certainly want to thank you again. Appreciate it.
Certainly thankful for the ending. Thank you.